I can't give you anything but love. La, 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 la. I can't give you anything but love.
Hello, Yankee brothers. This is your Japanese sister, the voice of truth.
Get Tokyo Rose.
Reaches out.
Following World War II, America found it had solidified its place as a world superpower, though the culture at home was dominated by a mixture of patriotism and fear. In this environment, a young Japanese-American radio broadcaster from California became a symbol of national betrayal and a scapegoat for post-war prosecution. Her name was Eva Toguri Takino, though she was better known to the public as Tokyo Rose, and her trial and conviction of treason reflected not only post-war paranoia but also the alarming pattern of racial injustice and violations of civil liberties in the states at this time. So was she truly a traitor, or just a victim of mass media hysteria and racial prejudice? The United States entered World War II on the side of the Allied powers in 1941 following the surprise Japanese attack on the Pearl Harbor naval base in Hawaii. In February 1942, FDR issued Executive Order 9066 authorizing the forced removal of Japanese Americans from the West Coast. This action was justified as a response to wartime national security concerns, but resulted in the unnecessary and inhumane internment of Japanese American citizens and contributed to rampant anti-Asian racism. Eva Toguri, born in Los Angeles, was visiting family in Japan when the war broke out and found herself unable to leave. Though pressured, she refused to give up her American citizenship. As a result, she was abandoned by her family, and struggling to support herself, she eventually landed a job at Radio Tokyo. There, she became an announcer on the 0 Hour, a propaganda show targeted at Allied troops in the Pacific. The 0 Hour was designed as psychological warfare, but ironically it failed to demoralize U.S. troops. Eva subtly fought against being too mean to the soldiers, and many even described the broadcast as entertaining. Still, after the war, America was eager for accountability and revenge. The public, encouraged by the media, began looking for someone to punish. They came up with Tokyo Rose, the grand perpetrator of Axis propaganda in the Pacific. The problem was, she wasn't a real person. It was only a name used to refer to any English-speaking woman broadcasting Japanese propaganda in the Pacific. Regardless, when reporters Clark Lee and Henry Brundage found Eva, they identified her as the Tokyo Rose. She was coerced into interviews that she agreed to in hopes of being able to return home, unaware that they would later be used as evidence to try her for treason. In 1949, Eva Toguri Takino became just the 7th person in U.S. history to be convicted of treason. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. But the trial was deeply flawed. Media and reporting played a big role in the case, and public opinion was shaped by anti-Japanese racism and a desire for a scapegoat. While soldiers' testimonies suggested the broadcasts were harmless, newspaper coverage declared her service to Japan smells of treason, which fueled a national desire for punishment. Despite this, even an impartial observer at her trial, journalist Virgil L. Elliott, later wrote to President Nixon that the evidence was vague, remote, and insufficient to support the charges. But the biggest problem with the case was only exposed in 1976 when Ronald E. Yates published a series of Chicago Tribune articles that revealed key witnesses had lied on the stand about Takino's alleged crimes, and the prosecution, which was again the U.S. government, had known about it. Eva Toguri would later be pardoned by President Ford on his last day in office in 1977, but only after having her life uprooted, 20 years of legal battles, including 6 spent in prison, and she was never reunited with her husband, who was forced to return to Japan after her trial. She died in Chicago in September of 2006. Though unique, her story mirrors the injustices faced and fates of many Japanese Americans during World War II who had their rights taken out of wartime hysteria. Eva's civil liberties were disregarded, as were those of the people interned under Executive Order 9066. Her identity was weaponized for political gain, like victims of McCarthyism, and she was convicted to satisfy a desire for revenge. Her case raises questions about the role of media in shaping legal decisions, how national security concerns are used to justify violations of rights, and about if justice on that scale can be righted later on. While Ford's pardon restored her citizenship and acknowledged the miscarriage of justice, the damage had been done. Eva Toguri Takino was not a traitor, and the concerning pattern of hysteria justifying violations of rights that her case reflected should be remembered as a warning, especially when we think about the ongoing problems with racism and prejudice in America.
Well, how are all my darling little dopes tonight? Full of beer and belligerence? I know. You still hate us, but don't let that hate keep festering. It poisons the whole system. What you need is some good jive. I mean solid. Helps you relax. All set? Okay, here's the first blow at your morale. Kay Kaiser swinging and singing. Hey, Pop, I don't want to go to work. He's still listening. Until then, this is Orphan Ann, your number one enemy reminding you, GI, always to be good. Goodbye now. Well, I suppose you GIs would like to know a little bit about me. Well, I was born in the city of Los Angeles and went to the University of California at Los Angeles, graduating in the year 1941. I left the United States in July of 1941 to visit a sick aunt, my mother's only living sister here in Japan. When I realized that the situation between the United States and Japan was getting a little strained, I went through the proper channels to try to book taxis on the Tatsuta model